we all carry ancestral cords, and we all carry trauma from our previous family or our previous lifetime or our lineage.
So ancestral healing for me very often is the thing of coming back into community where we've lost community, or coming back into a harmonious sense of community.
Ancestral healing, it's not just in the familial, the direct ancestors and descendants, it's also in the environment.
Ancestral healing. All healing is ancestral, because any aspect in us that we can heal, that it goes into transformation and brings healing to us. So through us, to all our ancestry in the past, and also goes beyond into the new generations in the future. So all healing is ancestral. But this month in Universal Healing, we are focusing in ancestral healing, so we can say we're going to do healings like the healing for blood, and blood is such a representation of our family, our ancestors, our lineage, from our father and from our mother, and we're going to be working with that, and it's such a powerful healing. Because not long ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, I had an experience of healing where I went to experience what my grandfather felt after being killed against the wall by the firing squad in the Civil War in Spain, and how his soul, his consciousness, his awareness got embedded in the next generation after him, and I'm the generation after the next generation, and that fear of showing up, becoming known, being seen into the world, because what can happen is that you may get killed. So that protective consciousness, that it was fear embedded in my cells, in my DNA, and having that experience, I could feel how that was leaving me, and on leaving me, it was leaving all our lineage. So we're going to be focusing in all this type of healing that focuses in what from your family is in you, that is not supporting you, that is not helping you to be who you are, and do the life that you are here for. So we hope that you like our month of healing and join us, because it's such an important healing our ancestry. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
My name's Amy Alston, Amy Inoka Alston, and my lineage, my background, I'm part Hawaiian, Chinese, and also Caucasian. Caucasian being actually from Bohemia before it was disbanded as a country. And for me, ancestral healing has always been a huge part of my journey. It's something that I have felt deeply in my bones. And I feel like part of that is because of my culture. What I've noticed are, Indigenous people, very much all the work that they do in the healing realm, it is directly related to the ancestors. And that's because of their strong connections to the ancestors and to the quantum realm of past, present, and future all happening simultaneously. When I work with clients who maybe don't understand what ancestral healing is or why it's important, the ancestral piece is our lineage piece. It's just like me my mother, my grandmother, her parents, and so forth. That's the ancestral part. That is all connected into a much broader healing of collective healing. That's our community, our towns, and these all shape our belief systems. Culture shapes our belief systems, and that's why it's important, and so deeply connected to ancestral healing. And so, like for me, through my indigenous roots, when I'm working, with ancestral healing, it's not just in the familial, the direct ancestors and descendants, it's also in the environment. So we have, we believe as Hawaiians, our connection to the rocks, the trees, the plants, the animals, those are our ancestors. You can walk outside and see these magnificent trees. Those are your ancestors. They were here long before us, and they hold wisdom of the environment. They hold wisdom from the soil, from the air, from the water that has DNA memory of us. And so that's why, when we encompass all of this in a holistic, not just a holistic in our body, but including the environment and the elements in the environment, it's all part of it. We're talking about ancestral healing, but I'm actually in the house that I was born and raised in Alaska. And so, I mean, right behind me, that's my mom. But she was very much, she kept the ancestral spirit alive. As I walk through my parents' house, and they've been here for over 50 years, there are pictures, so many pictures of, us as kids, of my cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. And, I'm just amazed. Like, I love walking into the house because it just brings back so many memories. And that's how we can keep our ancestors alive, by having just a small, even a little altar of photos of our ancestors. Yeah. So being here, my dad was recently in the hospital, so I came up to check on him. And, you want to talk about ancestral healing. I'm in the thick of it right now. I'm here. My dad just got out of the hospital. So already I can feel the ancestral healing that's happening just through my sister's work. She's doing her own journey of healing. And even if her case isn't about the ancestors, I'm going to imagine that it's going to come up in some way, shape, or form. Because we're all in this healing vortex. And when we do the work on ourselves, we become time travelers, in the sense of we actually get to rewrite the past. And that's how the healing happens. That's how we come into alignment. Yeah. And so that's how we get to rewrite the narrative. And the narrative is the story that has kept us stuck in the same patterns and the same behaviors, the same defenses for centuries, sometimes centuries. May look as a belief system. So I'm just trying to feel into what would be a good example. A belief system that maybe a certain type of person is bad because there was one culture that didn't like another culture for whatever reason. And so carrying that belief system and then being able to feel it physically, how it manifests in the body, how it manifests or where it manifests in the energy field, it's like pulling that thread to unravel the knot. And the moment that they can start, exploring that for themselves, they're going to create the experience to validate the new belief. But like what's happening for them, they're ultimately, there's the saying in healing, when you heal yourself, you're healing 7 generations backwards and 7 generations forward. Okay, so that's the ancestral line. But when you're doing that, when you're healing that lineage, you're also rewriting the story for so many other people. When you have that aha moment of the pattern has been, it ripples. It's like that pond, that stone being tossed into a pond, it ripples through the whole ancestral line, going back to its root. Barbara called it, TARS healing, an ancestral root cord healing. It's very similar to that. That ancestral root is the distortion that was put in place. Originally it was designed intelligently for survival. But over time, it creates the distortion and it actually creates a stuckness or a stagnancy, not only in the familial line, but in the culture. And so, as a Hawaiian, there are, many Hawaiians who are fighting to preserve the culture. And we see this in a lot of indigenous cultures. They want to, preserve it and save, which is absolutely necessary. And they don't leave room for the expansion of the culture itself. So there kind of becomes like this knot in its healing process that keeps it stuck. So I feel like, just now, even as a Hawaiian, we're coming to accept new forms of hula, new forms of new words that are being created that were never, in our vocabulary before. So for a culture to stay stagnant, it's going to die. Very much like the red flag that happens when people don't address, they don't want to talk about their family. Oh yeah, I have stuff I want to work on, but it has nothing to do with my mom, or it has nothing to do with my dad, or my culture. And those to me are like the first kind of red flags of where we should be exploring, because we tend to deny the exact thing that's going to bring us healing. Any type of healing modality that brings in, like family constellation, that brings in the characters within your life that are recreating, and they're just forms of helping us to drop into and explore those patterns that are happening between family members, that are happening between all of our relations. And that's really what it boils down to, is what is our relationship to certain members in our family, even our relationship to the self. But there's family constellation. There is, there's a myriad. I feel like ancestral healing has kind of become a buzzword in a lot of, in the healing community, in the healing realm. More people are really understanding the impact that our ancestors have on this present moment right now. And so, being able to take that lid off and begin looking at our family and the negative love bonds that we create within. And so any modality that helps a person to, help and assist a person to drop into the patterns that reoccur in our, familial unit. That's ancestral healing. It's not just a shaman shaking a rattle who's going to take you and journey you to another, land. It's actually very, very simple. And it's in the present moment, and it's mirrored in all of our relationships. Ancestral healing can be very simple, and it can also be very ornate. Just depends on what you need in that moment. But just through my work, and I've tried it all, doing ancestral healing, from plant medicine, ceremonies, to, doing my own very simple thing. And that's what I have found to be the most effective, is just cutting through all of the distraction for me and getting right to the heart of it, the heart of the wound that I've been so avoiding and that I don't want to look at. I said, I've found like just being with and cutting through to the very tender center, it's really simple. And being present with that is enough to create the fractal shift. And I say the fractal shift because we're made up of nanoparticles, and little shifts begin to happen all the time in our field. And that same shift happens within our ancestral cords. And that's why, I don't always work with those cords. because it just happens very naturally. So another piece, and I'm just going to share this between you and I, that I'm, working ancestrally, as I'm here, I've noticed in some of the local waters, so there's sloughs that run, around, this area, and they've become, their mineral content has changed. And I've noticed this change in the last 10 years. And so I'm actually working with some friends of my brother's who are researchers at the university. And we're going to be doing some water testing, changing, because what I've also noticed in the area, the change in everybody's on well water, and the water content has changed along. And so I'm noticing these things that are happening in the environment. And so there is a woman in Japan who went to BBSH. She was a classmate, but she works with homeopathic medicine, and homeopathic medicine works with the elements and the missing elements in our body. And she has done a whole research project on the consciousness of elements. So that's kind of coming into, like, my work as well. Like when I talk about the environment is, there's been a shift here in the mineral content. What does that mean? I don't know, but the healing, the energy field is the ancestral field, because we carry that. It's in our energy field already.
My understanding of ancestors, I think, is a good place for us to start. And generally, we all have our parents and then our grandparents and our family lineage going right the way back. And we would tend to see that as our ancestors. So as in our forefathers or the people we came from. But ancestors is a bit more than that, because they're also those ancestors the people who are buried in the soil that we live on. So there were people in any place where we live, there were people living there before. And everything that grows in that soil grows out of, we could say, out of their bones, or out of the remains of their bodies and their life. And so they also affect us, and they become our ancestors. And then we're not just human beings. We live in community with everybody else, everything else which inhabits this planet with us, be that animals, birds, insects, fishes, reptiles, plants, even the mountains and the rivers. And each of these things which we live with now has its ancestors. So there were those of them which came before. They all came from somewhere. So when we talk about ancestors, and my understanding of ancestors is not just our grandparents and our great-grandparents, but it's all ancestors. And so when we look at what it is about communities or cultures who work with ancestors or venerate ancestors, there tends to be an understanding that, we inhabit a physical body for a certain amount of years, but then there's a previous life that we've had before we are part of a physical body, and then there's a life that we go into after we're part of a physical body. And that life is as rich and as full as the life that we have while we have a physical body. So here in Southern Africa, the understanding is that the ancestors continue to be in community with us, and we continue to be in community with them. And they continue to interact with us on a day-to-day way. And really, for us to be completely in community, we should be interacting with them in a day-to-day way. So that's my understanding of ancestors generally. Ancestral healing is where we go the step ahead of that, and we go into looking at community and what it means to be in community. And fundamentally, the way I see it, we're primates. Science tells us we're part of the primate family of things. And as primates, we live in troops, and we rely on the rest of our troop for our survival. And that goes from simply things like protection, being able to to push away aggressors or something like that on a very basic level, right down to the fact that we groom each other and we stroke each other, we love each other, we cuddle each other. And as primates, those things are fundamental to us. So as troop creatures, if we're not in a good community, we suffer. You know, we suffer from ill health. And that might be on a physical level or on a mental level, on an emotional level. So this thing of ancestors is that they're part of our community who, I think in the sort of industrial paradigm, we tend to neglect it a lot. We say, okay, the dead are the dead and they're gone. They're no longer there. And we should be moving forward and leaving all that alone. But in a way that we're neglecting a huge part of our community, and we're out of community with a huge section of who we actually are. So ancestral healing for me very often is the thing of coming back into community where we've lost community, or coming back into a harmonious sense of community where we're in a non-harmonious sense of community, which a lot of us are, and it's part of life, you know. Even with those who are living, we're in dispute often, and there's tension and there's conflict and there's those things, and those things are healthy, except when they start to sever relationships and we start to find ourselves isolated and scattered and people excluded, and then as a community we're not cohesive anymore. Then we start finding ourselves susceptible to depression, mental illness, physical illness, and all of this. So I see that the job of ancestral healing is community work. It's not more than that. So yes, I've been working in this field for 30-something years, and I have a practice where people come to see me on an individual level. But you know, nobody's an individual, and each time a person comes and they say, okay, well, I've got some difficulty, and can we look into it? It's kind of the first question is, okay, so where are your relatives and how are you with your relatives? And you know, in the olden days in Botswana, where I learned this work, if a person went to see a traditional healer, they would say, well, why do you come alone? Where are your relatives? And that's always the first sign of there being a problem. If you don't come with other people, if you're sneaking around going to see traditional healers, it means that there's a problem with your relatives. So the first question is often, where are your relatives? And that question would often lead to people say, well, you know, I'm a bit at odds with these people, and there's a family dispute here, or there's a disconnection here. And so when people come to see me, sometimes they'll say, they'll present with some kind of a malady. Say somebody may come to me and say, I have depression. I've been suffering from depression for a while, and nothing seems to work. And then I kind of say, okay, so where are your relatives? And say, I don't speak to those people. It's like, oh, okay, well, this feeling of isolation which comes with depression and those kind of things, are you willing to work with it as a journey of healing, to go back through your family and see how you can reforge those connections? And for some people, obviously, that's very, very difficult, you know, to say, oh, I haven't spoken to my brother in the last 40 years, you know, we've been at terrible odds. Well, 40 years of depression is a long time. Is maybe today the day to change. Why don't you see, you know, take the initiative and see? And, you know, sometimes we find miracles with that. And, you know, obviously sometimes not, but sometimes it just takes that with an individual to start the journey of reconnecting with their greater family. And the greater family means with their ancestors, with their family community now, and then also with a sense of who's coming into the future, because it's not just the ancestors, it's also, we're here for our children, and we're here for our grandchildren, and we are ancestors to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And what we're doing now, we're doing as the ancestors of our great-grandchildren. And if we are selfish, we can make all our decisions and say, well, I'm here to gain the most out of this world. But if you say, okay, if I make a decision now with my great-grandchildren in mind, how will it benefit them? And how will it benefit that community? Then you're a real ancestor. And we would hope that our ancestors would be doing that. So we hope as individuals that we are connected in that way, forwards, backwards, and laterally, to all the communities who are around us. So I work with individuals like that. And when I work with communities, I don't work any differently. So I work in some non-governmental organizations. I have some small projects which I'm involved in. And basically, fundamentally, what we do is we work with cultures who formerly had very strong ancestral tradition. And now, because of modernization, some of those things are becoming lost or not practiced so well. And we simply work with dialoguing to enable people to reconnect with that way of doing it. And for the community to become cohesive. So the community who are now living in the community who are in the world, the community formerly, the ancestors of the community, and who is going to be in the community in 2 or 3 generations' time. And then the greater community of the land that we live in, you know, so the land that we live on has in it all the other creatures and the landscape itself. And we're in community with that, and as soon as we're out of community with that, we start to suffer. We have affliction and sickness. So my work is very simple. It's just that. It's just to inspire people to reconnect. And that doesn't mean that you have to like anybody. It simply means that there shouldn't be a severance with anybody, and that we should be back in community with everyone. And so, yeah, in a nutshell, that's my work. Just that reconnection work. Other way, yes. And you know, there are a lot of people who come to me and they've been taking the pill, you know, so it's not just in North America. We have such wonderful medication here as well, you know, that you can obliterate all your problems with. But, you know, after a while, there are many people who seek to find a different way to approach their malady or their maladies. And they come and they see me or somebody who does the same work, and you can say, okay, well, you know, if you've spoken to your psychiatrist and you're ready to come off of your medication, then let's replace it with something. And let's replace it with something which is very, very strong and very cohesive and very deep, so that you're not left floating somewhere. And people have done that, and I don't always recommend it. I think sometimes that, you know, it can be a precarious business to come off medication. But for some people, where we're just numbing a sense of disconnection and we're not doing the work of reconnecting with our community, I think it can be very, very beneficial just to slowly start this work, and then, you know, even come off the pill somewhere in the middle of the work, rather than drop the pills and let's get into the work now and let's have a bit of a crisis. I don't like crises. I think one has to be gentle and step by step with it. And, you know, often our community doesn't want to have us back, you know, and especially in the modern industrial world, you know, we're so used to that you can disconnect with your family and you can go off and you can make a life somewhere, and you can not have a clue who your ancestors were. We have a way of living with that, and it can be that as an individual you decide, okay, I'm going to start on this journey of reconnecting with my people and my ancestors, and you look them up and they say, no, we're not interested. We don't want, you know, and that it's a great difficulty and a great sadness. You can't, because you are your ancestors. You know, it's taken all these myriad generations of things coming together to create who we are. The little habits that are in the family, the cultural habits that are in the family, the national habits which are in the family, the values, all of these things, that's what our ancestors are. And so that becomes the field in which we are an entity. And, you know, I think sometimes we would say that a person's energy field is very individuated. But my feeling or my perception of it is it's much broader than that. And it connects a lot with other people, especially people who we're related to or people who we're close to. We share energy fields with people, and we share energy fields with a territory or a place where we live, an environment. And the demarcation between the two is very blurred. It's not demarcated so strongly. And so it's almost as if we are a consciousness which is moving through energy fields which belong to a greater than actually that we are in ourselves a contained energy field. So that's just my perception of it. So I work on that level with people and things and places, and trying to perceive the energy fields and see, okay, what are we moving through here? What is coinciding here? What is colliding here? What's happening? I think that's a good question, and I don't have a good answer, but I have some speculation on the matter which I might share, and I think it's a matter of our willingness to be vulnerable in a certain way. It's a precarious business also, because as you're vulnerable to that kind of energy, you start to find yourself less able to function in the industrial world. And you go into a place where there's a lot happening energetically with machines and electronics and people in a big rush, and you find like, oh, I can't do this. And so it's this balance of trying to have enough of that one can be perceptive, yet at the same time not be bombarded by it and overwhelmed by it, which happens to a lot of people in the work that I do. They are not able to work or to operate in the day-to-day modern world, which is a great sadness, because there's great wonder in the day-to-day modern world, but at the same time it's very overwhelming for a lot of us who are sensitive as it is, or perceive those kind of energies. So I think it's as simple as making yourself vulnerable, but at the same time balancing it with, can you actually then continue to be functional in the day-to-day world? The sick seek the healer. So it might be that instead of the healers going into the technological world to attend to the sick, that those people who are struggling, as they do anyway, kind of leave that world for a moment and go to the place where the healers are, which sometimes is in a more peaceful, more natural environment. And even in that, there's a bit of a healing journey in that, in taking a retreat away from the grinding machine for a while, and just going to somewhere where it's a lot more natural and a lot slower and a lot less energetically busy. I'm a big believer in that. And I think that our great-grandchildren, wherever they are, when they do a little piece of healing work on themselves, that a healing blessing comes back to us, and that we're given a little bit of strength. And in the same way that when we do a piece of healing work around ourselves and our communities, that strength, it flows back and forwards through the generations, and it affects our ancestors in a good way, and it affects our descendants in a good way as well.
Let's see. I'll start with a little bit of my background. So I started off, as far as healing work is concerned, back in 96, 97, with Reiki and Seikim, Seiken. A lot of people are familiar with Reiki energy. Seikim energy and Seikim energy is an Egyptian energy that was given to the planet back a long time ago, but was reintroduced in the 90s. I trained under the Seikim Mastery School in Washington, D.C. From there, I went into the Barbara School of Healing, where I completed the Advanced Studies program, became a teacher. I was also, for a while, the dean of the Year 4 program. So I'm also a licensed psychotherapist, marriage and family therapist, as well as an adult counselor in the state of Florida. So ancestral work, let's see, wow. I enjoy doing ancestral work with the majority of my clients, because I recognize that we all carry ancestral cords, and we all carry trauma from our previous family or our previous lifetime or our lineage that needs to be healed. So I look at the work that I do as working backwards about 7 generations, and then also going forward about 7 generations as well. Clients, I look at their presenting complaint, whatever that is. I really honor the energy that is present in the moment. So I look back at something that may be a pattern, or may have been a pattern in their history, their family history. And I also look at the genogram. So for some clients, I'll work a family genogram, which gives me an idea of where this issue originated. So if it's come second or third generation, I look back at the specific original trauma if it presents itself. And I notice where in the physical body it may show up, or in the auric field. So if it's in the heart chakra, second chakra, if there has been some sexual abuse, sexual trauma, I really connect with the higher self of my client in front of me, as well as ask the higher selves of those family members who carry this wound or trauma. Way of perceiving things. I look at, yes, this client may have experienced some type of trauma early on, but how did they make it to today? Okay. And they already have the tools necessary to keep going, but they may not be aware of it. Maybe something that's in shadow. Maybe in that moment they're experiencing a crisis. So what I like to do is get them to focus on what's going on in the moment, as well as how they overcame. Okay, so looking at their strategies for success and have them build on those same strategies. Now, energetically, I may go back to that original trauma and work, with those ancestors who appeared. But for the client, I like for them to focus on overcoming the challenge rather than staying fixed in the story or staying stuck in the story. So yeah, looking at their core essence, their core qualities, and saying, okay, yeah, you experienced this, I honor that. And I honor those ancestors who carried it all of these generations, because right now is the opportunity for the healing and the transformation. So I will call in those parts of us that will go forward, that will be here tomorrow, okay, and then the next day. And as I'm working with a client, I will transform, help to transform with their energy anything that needs to go forward. Anything that from this point on, whether they know it or not, they've affected their lineage, they've changed their DNA. Okay, it's interesting because we just did a DNA healing the other day, and it was really cool. And some of that information came forward. It's like, oh wow, okay, so this is changing the DNA for those people who come after us. Okay, whether we have children or not, or believe in reincarnation, that pattern no longer exists. So an example would be, I've worked with a client who was estranged from her children, okay? And there was a pattern that she carried for a long time that was handed down through generation culturally. And as she started to heal this specific trauma, she was able to see these shadow pieces. She was able to transform these pieces of her that had been distorted within, I would say, a month or two. She started hearing from her children that things started changing and transforming in their lives. Okay, so much so that the daughter who she was estranged from ended up showing up at an event, and they were able to reconnect and reconcile. So it's looking at that, this one person, this one healing can affect the children and the grandchildren and then the great grandchildren, and that wound or trauma no longer exists or is transformed. So I work with relational cords a lot. I work with root cords. I work with the different cords that we have, using the Brennan model, as well as light body. I'm a light body graduate, and so I kind of integrate or incorporate the different modalities of healing. There's also a DNA training that I've done. So I work with the belief system, how it shows up, what these beliefs are, where they originated, and how the individual sitting in front of me is holding on to those beliefs. Whether they know it or not, they're sending these beliefs through their relational cords to their loved ones. Okay, so as I'm doing the cord work, the first thing that happens is I communicate with my client, then I'll communicate with the person on the other end, whether they're present in this realm or have transitioned. I'll work with their relational board. So I'll start to call them in, ask for permission to work with them. As I'm clearing and cleaning these cords and looking for any distortions, I can notice that whatever that pattern or that the history of the wounding is in that other person starts to change, starts to morph, starts to become healthier and stronger. If they're still alive, the relationship between my client and that other person starts to change. Okay. Mostly for the better, sometimes not so much. They feel something, they feel uncomfortable. The other person may feel uncomfortable, like, hey, I'm not ready to let go of this anger or this pain. I want to hold on to it. Whatever their beliefs are, they hold on to. But for my client, they no longer have that attachment to holding on to that trauma or pain, and they can start living their lives more fully. Now, ultimately, ideally, I guess, the other person will resolve it, will be doing their work as well, not necessarily with me, but someone else, and they're transforming that so that they're not sending it off to their children or descendants. So relational cords, we were taught the females on the left side, the males on the right side. So any male we've ever been in contact with, we've ever had a relationship with, those cords are still there, and that history is still there. So I can start to see it or experience it as changing, becoming stronger, clearing, so that they're not holding on to whatever this issue is. They can let it go and they can start to heal. With the root cords, to really core the ancestral root cords is really cool, because I can see, or I've experienced, where if the loved one who handed down or thrust that root cord as they're transitioning, they take out that root cord and then thrust it in to the root cord of the client, if that client is going to carry on the lineage or the culture. Sometimes it's done without the permission of the client, and then they're carrying on a lot of the wounding. And I can see the body, the physical body, start to shift, and it's like, oh wow, I have to carry on my culture. I have to carry this on for my people. I don't even understand it. I don't know what it is, but I'm carrying this on. So when I've worked with clearing and healing that, I can see that entire lineage, where this first trauma or belief formed, and I can go back with their permission, start to heal it, so that my client doesn't have to be burdened with whatever came before them that they don't understand. Doesn't always work. Maybe there's more work that needs to be done. For the most of them, I would say 60% success rate when I've done that work. It's exhausting. It's exhausting for me, and it also brings up a lot of my stuff. Because of the work that I do and the different spiritual beliefs that I have altars dedicated to ancestral work or ancestral lineage, and I communicate with them. I offer them water or whatever it is that I understand that they like. And the communication for me has to be solid, has to be strong, because they have wisdom that I can't even imagine. Their prayers are being answered through me. And my belief is that the prayers of my clients' ancestors are being answered right now through them. So I work extensively with the ancestors and the different spiritual guides, with both the African traditions as well as the Native American or American Indian traditions. What I really want to convey is that this work is sacred, very sacred, and for me, it's an honor to be able to do this type of work, because I definitely see the benefit and the value of recognizing the ancestors, recognizing well, one Mother Earth, where we are, and whatever the individual's beliefs are, we are held all the time. We're never alone. We always have our guides. We have our ancestors with us. You just have to listen, and it's important to ask. Ask for support, ask for help, because they want to help us. They're here to help us. And for me, the transition from the physical body to the spiritual world is important to recognize that it's not over. We have an opportunity to keep going, and maybe we're not in this form, but we are doing so much transformational and transcendent work that for ourselves, as well as for those who came before us, and for the future generations, that we can leave a really lasting, healthy, happy, joyous, blissful legacy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other adjectives that I could use, but and I find it to be fun. I get out of my head. I let myself surrender to whatever needs to be here. So I get out of my head, no ego, just, hey, what's here? Okay. Ooh, you didn't know how to play when you were younger. Okay, how can we help you play now? At that time when you were around, it was a lot of hard work, or you had to grow up really quickly. So how can I help my client, your descendant, learn how to play so that you can heal that part? Or, they don't trust themselves. Ooh, okay, that feels painful. Let me help my client to really learn how to trust. And then that can heal that person who didn't know how to trust, or didn't know how to just enjoy life. Because I think ultimately that's what we're here to do, is really enjoy ourselves, help each other, heal each other, heal ourselves, and enjoy our time here now. I don't believe there's any time. Everything is happening at once, and so it's just a matter of just being present to all of that, and to recognize that we're here to be vessels for transformation. And the more clear we are, the more clarity we have, the better we can hold this energy. And it's for everybody.